Hey guys, back this time to chat on the odds of sports betting. I want to break down some of the numbers for you, let you get a good idea of the percentage you need to win as a break even, based on the odds you're betting. I feel like a lot of people don't realize this. Like a lot of people just kind of blindly make bets, because they think a number is favorable or they like a number, but they don't really understand the true math behind it. So I want to share that with you today in this video. I want to also give you some tidbits on when to maybe bet money line versus the actual spread itself, maybe even scenarios where both is warranted or are warranted. As I mentioned, I'm going to go into the spreadsheet that I have behind me. Some of you may look at it already know what it is, but if you don't, I'll definitely detail it out for you. Also going to touch on when you make sports bets, how should you be making them? Should you be making them based on your risk amount or your to-win amount? Should these two numbers or these numbers that you're using to bet always be the same, or at least nearly identical? I'll touch on that as well. Some of the things in this video may be maybe obvious to some of you. Maybe some of it'll be a good refresher. Maybe some of it'll be, complete learning experience. But I wanted to get this video out because I know that I do a few different videos on the picks, on the research, on bankroll management, but I want to give you now the odds perspective. What I'm looking for when I feel like or have models behind me telling me a number is in fact favorable. So real quick, I'm just going to dive into at least start with when you're betting. Every bet you make from a sports book, you're always gonna have to pay juice or vig. That's why when you hear people say minus 110, is your customary bet. Basically when you're betting a spread at 3.5, 4.5, whatever it is, it's typically going to be minus 110 on both sides. That little extra 10 cents is the juice, or what sports books will call the vig. It's basically how they make their money, because if you're 50% on all your bets, which most people more or less are, a little above, a little below. But regardless, if you're exactly 50%, the sportsbook is going to win money off of you because of that vig. So every 9 or 10 bets, depending how much vig you're paying, every 9 or 10 bets, you're going to be basically losing a full unit. Again, basically dropping 10% a unit. Customary bet you'll see is $11 to win 10. That's on the lower side of things, but I'll use smaller numbers to simplify it here. $11 to win 10 would be a typical bet made at minus 110. But if you see like minus 120, you'll need $12 to win 10. Minus 200, you'll need 20 to win 10. And I can go so on and so on and so on with that. Now, what I have behind me, and again, I don't think a lot of people really realize this. This is a break-even chart. Now, this is one that I made myself, but you can find these on the internet. You could probably just Google sports betting break-even chart. What I have here, if I start on the left, the odds of the favorites. Okay, I included 100 on both sides just because it just made it look better. But if the odds of a favorite of minus 110, minus 120, minus 130, the break-even percentage I have to the right is how often you have to win percentage-wise when you're making bets at those prices. So, for instance, if you like, let's say you're a typical favorite better, which is a typical common square thing. A lot of people like favorites and overs, but we'll say you're a typical guy that likes to bet your minus 150, minus 160 favorites. Maybe if it's in hockey, maybe you like money line favorites in basketball, football, whatever it is, you like minus 160 favorites. Okay, well, this chart proves to you that if you like minus 160 favorites, in order for you to have profitability, you need to be winning more than 61.54% of those minus 160 bets. If you're winning exactly 61.54% of all your minus 160 bets, you will exactly be breaking even. $0 lost, $0 won. And the same thing goes for as you go down the charts here. If you like minus 200 favorites, if you like minus 140, 180, 280, 300, you can go all the way down, and I can keep scrolling down if you'd like. But for sake of this video and trying to keep a long story short, you you want to use a chart like this to your advantage. You can't just look at it, look at a team, look at a line, look at a price, and say, hey, look, this team. I think the even though the Bulls are minus 6.5, or even if the Warriors are minus 6.5 against the Utah Jazz, I think the Warriors are going to win hands down. So, but I don't like to play in the spread, so I'm just going to play a money line, minus 6.5, which is probably going to put you at, I don't know, I guess minus 280 ish, somewhere in that ballpark. Um, so you bet them at minus 280. Now the problem with that is what you might not realize is for you to make a minus 280 bet, you need to be 74% confident in that bet. So you need to realize that that bet would need to win 3 times out of 4 for you to actually have profitability long term. And I don't think a lot of people realize that when they make these types of bets. Like when they bet heavy money line favorites, especially when they parlay a bunch of money line favorites, um, realize that you're not getting a lot of good value there just because it's like, oh well, I think it's a sure thing, Billy. I think there's no way this team loses. Well, look at the chart, look at the numbers, realize when you look at them, when you bet a minus 300 favorite, they literally need to win 3 out of 4 times for you to exactly break even. Not exactly all that promising, because when you take four minus 300 favorites, you know the idea is that if you lose one of them, you will not win anything. So if you bet them all separately anyway, if you parlay them, you'll get a little extra profit there. But ultimately, this is a break-even chart, and it's good for anybody viewing it to make sure they have this in their repertoire when they're looking at games. These numbers should be memorized. You should have these in your head. You should know off the top, right off the top of your head. If you want to bet a minus 150 favorite, they got to win 6 times out of 10 for you to just break even. Now we'll flip the script a bit. We'll go over to the dog side. Now you'll see that I have the exact same thing set up for you. Now, if you want, I could give you the exact formula to get these numbers if you'd like. I can put it in the chat. Just comment below if you want it. But again, you can Google that and get that information as well. If you want to bet a dog, let's say you want to bet a dog at plus 120, right? So a plus 120 dog would need to win 45.45% of the time for you to profit long term. Now, again, you can keep going down the line. For you to win a plus 300 dog, that dog has to win straight up 1 time out of 4 for you to break even. So I just think, more or less, people love betting favorites. So people are going to be more attracted to what's on the left side of the screen versus the right side. But if you're somebody that really likes dogs, please use this chart to your advantage as well. These are numbers you need to have memorized. Whenever you like a game, whenever you like a spread, not so much a spread, more or less the money line bets for teams. Maybe if you this is a good transition as well. Maybe if you're buying points, maybe if you're somebody that hates buying points. That loves buying points. First of all, let me tell you this: if you're buying points, don't ever buy points to push. Okay, what does that mean? So like, if there's a game that's minus 6.5, and you're like, oh man, I really don't want to lose this game. So you know what? I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy half a point up to 7, so that I can push if I win. So that if instead of losing, I would push. Why would you pay extra juice for a push? Like, I'll accept somebody who wants to maybe buy vig on a line that maybe line transitioned in a direction where it's not minus 110 anymore. Maybe you only have to lay like minus 104 or 103, and you can buy half a point to get you back to 110 in your favor. Only do that though when you go to a half point number. Don't do that off a number you could push from. Think about how silly that sounds. You're paying extra juice up front for the potential to push a bet. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. But like I said, I'm not saying there's not times where you wouldn't want to buy a number, but I know a lot of people who buy numbers all the time. It's wild. It's just wild because you're paying useless juice. Useless juice. Again, I'm not saying the one-off scenario where you have a minus 102 that you don't mind paying the full vig at minus 110 and you get a half point number in your favor. But always remember, the number is the most important part. Buying numbers means extra juice, means this chart becomes more prevalent again. All right. So if you have a minus 10 game and you buy half a point, and now they want you to lay minus 130, keep in mind that you just went from 52.38% break even to 56.52% break even. And maybe in a small sample size you'll get away with it, but long term, you have to know these numbers and you have to understand that over time, buying numbers will beat you. Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. It's really a square thing to do. But for the most part, you can get away with it from time to time. But again, I definitely would heavily vote against it. Now, with regards to when you make bets, risk amount versus to win amount. When you bet favorites, the favorites should always be for the to win amount. Okay, so you bet a favorite. Let's say they're a minus 120 favorite, right? Or even you're betting minus 110, where what do I bet? Do I bet $100 or do I bet to win $100? You would always bet to win $100. So in that case, you would bet $110. Or in the case where the numbers were smaller from before, you would bet $11 in that scenario. So again, when you bet favorites, you want to bet the to win amount. When you bet underdogs, and now when I say you bet underdogs, what I mean, you bet money line underdogs, not like I'm getting 3 minus 110 underdog, because that's not an underdog. You're getting 3 points. The bet is an underdog, but you're still laying juice at minus 110 getting those 3 points. That's not what I'm talking about. When you bet dogs on the money line, it should be to risk your unit size, in this case $10 or $100. So again, just to recap, when you bet favorites, okay, your minus 110 bets, your spread bets, your minus 200, your minus 250, your minus 180s, those should always be to win. So you put up the extra juice up front so that you will, if the game wins, you will win 1 unit. Okay? When you bet dogs on the money line, you want that to be the to risk amount, which will be 100 in your case, or $10 in your case. Now, you might ask, well, why do you do it that way? Well, it keeps everything structured, right? If you bet a favorite, if you bet one favorite and one dog, right, using what I just told you, the to win amount for the favorite, the to risk amount for the dog, if you go 1-1, you will break even. I mean, well, if you go 1-1 with the favorite winning, which has the better chance to win anyway, if you go 1-1 with the favorite winning, you will break even. You will have no money lost. Now, if you do it in that same scenario and the dog is actually the exact same price on the opposite end as the favorite, so let's say you did a minus 110 favorite and a plus 110 dog, and the dog wins and the favorite loses, you would still break even. I think people way too often use either the to risk amount for both favorites and dogs or the to win amount for both favorites and dogs. And what happens is your bankroll gets a little bit mixed up because you're either too invested in the favorite or you're too invested in the dog. And I think that, you know, when you use what I just told you, where your bets to win amount should always be on the favorites and the to risk amount should always be on the dogs. Over time, you know, your bankroll will have more success that way because, again, your money's more correlated and it's more in sync. And again, long-term bankroll speaking, you're gonna be in much better shape. Now, I wanted to do this video with you guys for a few reasons because I feel like there's so much illegitimate handicappers and touts out there that just kind of blindly say, oh yeah, bet this favorite, this team will crush this team, or this team will crush that team, love the number. You know, they'll just say love the number. There's no real rhyme or reason behind it. It's just, yeah, love the number. But more or less you'll hear people say like, oh, I think team A is going to absolutely destroy team B. What I want you guys to be focused on more going forward, and this is relative to this video, even though it's a little bit going off on a tangent, what I want you guys to be more focused on, especially moving forward and long term, is that the number is the key part. When you handicap a game, I want you guys going forward to not just look at it as I love team A or I love team B. I want you guys to say to yourselves, I love team A at this number. Great. About a 4 to 5 point gap where the game itself is a no play. And then I like team B at this number. Let me give you an example. If the Warriors, in the same example, Warriors are playing the Jazz, right? So Jazz are traveling to Golden State. Golden State's we'll say minus, I know I said minus 7.5 before. We'll say the same thing. We'll say they're minus 7.5. And going into the game, and this goes back to some of the other videos I said, where you got to start to become an odds maker. You got to start to become somebody who's making your own lines, because over time you'll find yourself getting much better at it. And even when you think you're wrong, you can kind of research and figure out why your line that you thought it would be was wrong, right? But the more you're creating your own lines, the more you're able to facilitate proper bets moving forward. And this goes back to my two-sided bets that I was just mentioning. In the scenario that I gave you with Warriors minus 7.5, you might look at that and say, you know what? Warriors minus 7.5, I put my own line out, and my own line was Warriors minus 8.5. So I think there's a tiny, based on my models, tiny bit of value with the Warriors at minus 7.5, but not enough, right? So what you do is you create what I would consider like a 3 to 4 point window, right? Where you say to yourself, okay, well, the line didn't open in my favor, but a lot of people, for whatever reason, are betting the Utah Jazz. And now the line has moved from 8.5 to 7.5, which was up to 7.5, then down to 6.5, and then you see it down to 6, 5.5. Now remember, when you capped the game, you capped it at 8.5, but now you're seeing 5.5. What I want you guys to start doing is saying, hey, look, based on my models, I think a fair line for this game is 7.5. I will bet the game if it goes to 5.5 in favor of the Warriors. So if I only have to lay 5.5 with the Warriors, I'll bet the Warriors in that spot. But if, to swing things around, if the game goes to, before game starts, whatever happens where a lot of money comes in on one side for one reason or another, the game goes to plus 9.5 or plus 10.5, we'll say plus 10.5 for this example, plus 10.5 for the Jazz, now the Jazz are a good bet for me. So again, what are we saying here to recap? You and your models said, I thought the Warriors would be an 8.5-point favorite for this game. Line comes out, it's 7.5. You then realize after, we'll say 2 hours before game time, you log in, like a degenerate, you log in, see if you can make any late bets before you go to sleep, and boom, you see the Warriors are right now, before the game starts, minus 5.5. Now in your models, you had that if you could get the Warriors at 5.5 or under, you would bet the Warriors as you considered that a favorable number. So you bet the Warriors. But I'll give you the counter to that, the exact opposite. Let's say your models had that line at 6.5, right? And the line comes out at 7.5. So now you think there's a little bit of value in Utah. You log in 2 hours before the game starts and you see, oh, whoa, what the hell happened? Utah's now plus 9.5. You look, you research, nothing crazy, just kind of a lot of money coming in for no reason. Maybe chasers that lost a bunch of games earlier. Regardless, you see 9.5 and you're like, whoa, okay. My models had 9.5 as the favorable spot where I would in fact bet the Jazz. There's not enough people that do this. It's two-way betting, and it's what everybody should be doing. I say this because the number is the most important part. Don't ever oversell yourself on a team or even a specific number, okay? Always keep in mind that both sides should always be in play, okay? Whenever I give you guys free videos, I always have in my mind a number on the opposite side that I would bet it. And that just doesn't go for spreads. It goes for totals too. I might look at a game and look at my models and I might say, okay, I really like this line at 6.5 or 7. Line comes out, it's 5. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Extra value there for the favorite. I only have to lay 5 instead of what I considered 7. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, you know what? The public looks like they might move this line, or the sharps might move this line. Another point, which I'll wait. That's another thing I want you guys to realize when you're looking at bets. Getting the early number is important, but it's important in most scenarios, not all. What I want you to consider when you're looking at a line and you see that it opens, you're like, oh wow, I really like this number. Before you actually bet it, try to give yourself a perspective on which way you think the line will move, because over time, I'm really confident, and I'm confident in my ability to predict line movement, and you see it in the videos. Like I'll give you a line, and typically it'll be the best number you get, when I give it to you. Now, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, the numbers I give you are typically the best numbers because I have a good handle on where money's going to move a number. And that comes down to good research. But that is fairly predictable. You can get a pretty good idea of where the public or where the sharp money, where a large amount of money is going to move a number. And it's advantageous to you. Why is it advantageous? Because it'll mean you'll get a better number. If you like, people always say, if you like a favorite, bet them early. If you like an underdog, bet them late. But the thing is that's not always true. It's true a decent part of the time, but it's not always true. You need to always be looking at lines, trying to get an idea of where the public is betting money. You could use some sites to give you that information. Some of it's kind of like he said, she said, though, and some of it's untrustworthy. And we live in, a technology world where everybody feels like they have all the answers to everything. But you got to keep in mind that do your own due diligence research. You could pay a website like the Action Network or Sports Insights to get data like that. But how reliable is it? I can't really tell you, but I can tell you that if you do your own research, you start to create your own lines, the odds you'll find yourself betting time and time again will be much more improved. Your bankroll will end up being a positive just because of that aspect alone. Now there's a lot of layers to the onion in sports betting. Okay, and as you unravel it, you'll realize it's more than just looking at a game, picking a team, making a bet, winning it, and cashing out. Over time, there are so many things involved. There's the psychology aspect, the ability to keep yourself from staying away from tilt. There's the analytics part, the ability to make sure you're constantly making the same unit bets, the same sizes. There's the bankroll management part where the ship isn't going off the sails because of one bad day. You're not over betting on certain things. You're not using overconfidence to make you lose bets you shouldn't. You're not betting too much in one game. There's so many different aspects to this, and that's why I try to give you a bunch of these different types of videos that can be helpful to you. Now, this one, as they usually do, went a little longer than I had hoped it would, but I hope it was informative for you because I think that there's a lot of untapped knowledge in this industry that not a lot of people really give out, at least give out willingly, and that's why I wanted this channel to be different. I want you guys to be able to not only just be able to listen to my bets and listen to my perspectives and research I want you guys to be able to become better sports bettors. And it's not something that's done overnight. It takes time. I mean, um, not an easy process, but you can get there. And I said, you can get there from this channel. I'll show you a bunch of different things you can do. And again, I think this was helpful. I hope this was helpful for you from an analytics and numbers perspective. This chart is something that I want to keep in the back of the screen the whole video, because I want you, if you haven't, to write it down. Keep these numbers firm in your head, because I can't express how many times I hear people say, oh, I love this team versus this team money line. And I don't think they realize that, like, just because they're betting a minus 180 favorite, which is a quote unquote favorable spot, I don't think they realize that a minus 180 favorite means they have to win over 64% of the time for them to be profitable betting minus 180 favorites. And that's just a small example, but you could think, I'm sure, of millions and thousands and millions of examples where that might have rung a bell to you at some point or another. So I want you guys to remember this chart, keep it in mind, and use it going forward. You can Google it if you don't want to write this down. This information is available plenty of places. I want to thank you guys again for watching the video. Thank you for staying loyal to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Definitely giving you guys a lot of free picks recently. I love doing these tutorial videos with you as well. Want to make you guys much better sports bettors long term, and there's a lot of different layers to that, which I try to hit on here and there. But ultimately, like the video if you haven't already. Give it a thumbs up, and comment below on any questions you have in regards to the video. I know some from time to time I go on tangents in these videos, just because a lot of thoughts come to my head while I'm doing them. There's no script. I'm not going off of anything here. I just kind of have an idea of what I want the video to be about, and that's why I start talking. But ultimately, hope you enjoyed the video. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch it. Again, subscribe to the channel if you are not already. I'll have a few more videos for you this week with some picks. But other than that, thanks again, guys, and I will see you soon.